if Zohran gets elected, will the cops like serve him? You know, will they like be down? You know, to because they are like almost a parallel government in a certain way.
Yeah,
you know,
that is the main thing I'm nervous about. I mean, there's going to be a lot of obstinates if Zohran becomes mayor, which is not a sure thing, but he, in theory, has authority over them. The lesson from de Blasio, though, might be that you have to, like, show them who's boss, which he didn't really do.
De Blasio's first mistake is he immediately hires a Giuliani guy, Bill Bratton, to be the commissioner. You got to hire a commissioner who's a little bit with the program.
Right. Yeah, find a woke police chief out there or something.
The Vanquished.
Hello and welcome to The Vanquished. Anders J. Lee here with Freddie G.
So happy to be here.
And we are rejoined by our pal, returning champion, Davidson Boswell.
Thanks for having me back, guys. Appreciate it.
To discuss something slightly relevant to what's going on in New York City today, where we're recording. There is a hot and heavy mayoral election. Very contentious race. We have a left-wing outsider who's taking on the establishment and was underestimated from the jump and may climb to the top. By the time you're listening to this, you'll know the answer potentially. But that sounds kind of familiar. We had one of those in New York City just 12 years ago or so. And that brings me to the subject of today's ep. Former mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio.
Billy.
Big Bill, Big Bird.
Yeah, he does look like Big Bird in a few ways.
Yes.
You know, he got a lanky build.
Right, and the nose kind of, Big Birdie.
He was a gigantic man.
A doofus.
Yes. We were just talking about this before the show. Like, Ross Barkin pointed this out, that Andrew Cuomo, like, fills a suit. Mm-hmm. He's not as tall as Bill de Blasio, but he doesn't need to be because there's, like, a presence to him. Bill de Blasio is so tall that it's actually, if you're going by like sexist standards, it's actually like a burden that he's so tall. It makes him more awkward and cumbersome.
Neither man you'd like to have just appear behind you, like Cuomo or Bill de Blasio, but I would pick de Blasio, I feel like. Yeah. Like, okay, all right.
He's a gentle giant.
Yeah, you don't look like a dinosaur, at least.
Right, yeah.
Women consent to being around him, which Cuomo has trouble with.
Yes.
Right, there's like a certain amount of tallness where, especially if you're not super buff, where it's like you're not threatening the taller you get. Yeah, that's definitely.
Yeah, it's the parade float that gets flown around in front of used car lots. That kind of wacky.
Yeah. Definitely, but yeah, I was resident in New York for both of his elections to mayor. I remember 2013. He was really not talked about until the very end, and he kind of burst through and was like, okay, I guess we're going with this guy.
Friend of the show, Alec Baldwin, endorsed him.
Really?
That's what
I didn't know that. Interesting.
And Sarah Jessica Parker.
Nice.
West Village royalty.
I did see that. People said the ad put him over the top. The ad with his son, who had a really cool afro.
Yes.
So do you, Freddie.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's like I could birth a future Bill de Blasio son. I guess. For me, it was like he's got this cool black son with the afro. He's married to a black woman. That's great. But then you find out that she used to call herself a lesbian, and again, I'm dumb. I was much dumber in 2013. It was like he converted this woman from lesbian to his wife. This man can do no wrong, and that was all I needed to hear.
That's very like Spike TV coded. You know what I mean? Like that's like, oh wow, this guy, his magical penis can like bring a woman around.
He was that hot. Yeah, he converted people. He had that Italian charisma. Little bit about him. He was born in Manhattan, across the street from Gracie Mansion. So it's like becoming the mayor was his destiny.
That's like out of Charles Dickens or something.
Yeah.
Like seeing it your whole life and then
Right.
His parents picked that hospital maybe because of that, because he was from Connecticut.
Yes. Yeah, they were living in Norwalk, and they decided to drive all the way to Manhattan to birth their child. Kind of a similar. I was born in Washington, D.C. My family lived in Arlington, Virginia at the time, and my mom, for whatever like spiritual reason, wanted me to be born in a city and not in Virginia, which
Arlington?
That's what I call it. I like calling Arlington Arlington.
Okay.
But she, as a native New Yorker, she was like, I am not gonna have my son be born technically in the South. So we want him born in D.C.
Oh,
wow.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's so wow. Your mom is super granola in that way.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. But he grew up in New England. They moved to Cambridge. He got the nickname Senator Provolone in high school.
That's excellent, man.
I have an issue with provolone. Yeah, I used to eat it because I think it's the lowest fat cheese, so it's like cheese, but the least cheesy cheese. And now that I'm keto, I'm against it.
It's funny that he like started off as provolone and then he ended his mayoral ship eating Shake Shack on camera in a disgusting way. You know,
Yeah.
things have a bookend in that way sometimes.
Food is definitely a big part of the de Blasio mythos and legacy. He's gotten himself in trouble with eating things. Pizza once was spotted eating with a knife and fork. That was like
cardinal sin.
Yeah.
And this was in Staten Island.
Yeah.
It's amazing he made it back alive.
I mean, he really, it's the eating pizza with a fork, and he also is a Red Sox fan and did not abdicate fandom when he got into New York City politics, which is very bold.
That shows you how unpopular Stop and Frisk was. You know, they're like, "Wow, we don't care.
We'll
Stop slamming us on the ground."
Right. We'll take a Red Sox fan. Yeah.
Yeah, Hillary converted from Cubs fan, and they're not even that big of a rival compared to Yankees Red Sox.
Right. Yeah, she wear the Yankees hat, no big deal. I don't know if he ever wore that. He did have a Knicks jersey, or a Nets jersey at one point when he was a mayor, and they were, I think it was in 2021 where they had a playoff run. But growing up, he was kind of not just a Red Sox fan, but a red diaper baby, questionably. Kind of similar to his politics.
What does that mean?
Like his parents were at least investigated for being communists. If not, they were like it's similar to him. It's kind of hard to tell what their exact politics are, but it's like vaguely left wing, like progressive to Marxist maybe, but they were at least like pretty dyed in the wool liberal. His dad had worked for the federal government for a time, and they got investigated during the McCarthy era. His dad was a veteran who had served in Okinawa and lost part of his leg. Sadly, this is a dark point in young Bill's life. His dad did have lung cancer and ended up taking his own life, which is very sad, and has some effect on his psychology that I'm sure someone can explain. But
that's very like Joe Biden coded.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Having this like tragic, familial history.
Yeah, definitely.
Also crossover with Hank Hill. Hank Hill's dad also lost a part of the leg, Cotton Hill, in I think it was in Japan, against just Japanese.
Right.
Tojo, he would always talk about that.
Yeah. I think part of both his legs, and then they just like made him really short.
Rest in peace to John Redcorn, by the way. That
Yes, yes, very sad. But Bill went to NYU, went to Columbia, so he gets acclimated in New York there, and then he visits Nicaragua when he's 26 years old, and this kind of came up in 2013, like after he gets the nomination. This guy hasn't been really scrutinized that much, and then the New York Times is reporting how this guy was calling himself a socialist. He was part of the Sandinista Solidarity movement. He's described as tall and sometimes goofy, known for his ability to mimic a goose's honk. And
they're like, all right, you were involved in Iran-Contra, and also you sound like a goose.
Yeah.
Discordant criticism.
Yeah. I guess that, in the 80s, you didn't have a lot to do. So like, somebody could honk like a goose. That's entertaining.
He should have done it in the campaign. He's running against Wiener. Wiener gets in trouble again for the Carlos Danger thing. He should have been like, your goose is cooked, and then like made the honk.
Yeah. But he would speak, friends say, in long, meandering paragraphs. He would muse.
Joe Biden coded once again.
Absolutely, definitely. He would talk about FDR, Karl Marx.
Hello.
Yeah. He at least like brought him up as an influence. And also Bob Marley. He would talk about him all the time.
Not Joe Biden coded at all.
Right. I don't know if Biden's ever heard a verse of Marley.
De Blasio does kind of look like Joe Biden if he had a pituitary issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not wrong. But yeah, he would take notes on his encounters with Nicaraguans and was active in the movement even after the FSLN lost power in Nicaragua. That's, early 90s, he's reported as he would describe himself as a democratic socialist. Around the time he's starting to get into democratic politics, he works for Charlie Rangel and then works for his future nemesis, Andrew Cuomo, at HUD, Housing and Urban Development, in the 90s under Clinton, and goes on to manage Hillary Clinton's Senate campaign in 2000. So he's like kind of working for the New York machine and getting established.
Swamp creature.
Yeah.
It feels like he moves right because he starts out as a democratic socialist.
Yeah.
He's working for Dinkins, who's fairly left-leaning, the first black mayor in New York City history, and then he's in the Clinton machine, which is a lot more centrist.
Right. Yeah, he does work for Dinkins in around the early 90s, and that's where he meets Chirlane McCray and converts her, and they get married in 1994.
Converts her to what?
Being straight.
And we're saying it tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah. Hey.
Sexuality is a spectrum, and when you're a 6'5" dude who's just like great, like Bill de Blasio, you can't be resisted.
Right.
Magnetic charisma.
Yeah, now she says she doesn't like labels, I think. I wonder if because they're broken up now. So.
Oh, they broke up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
it's a Huma Abedin situation,
Yeah. Right. But his birth name was Warren Wilhelm Jr. after his father.
Pretty Nazi coded a little bit. Yeah,
right. Yeah. And he leans into the other side of the axis in Europe and changes his legal name to de Blasio in 2001, which is his mother's last name, because he identifies more with her. His dad had problems and wants to pay tribute to his mom. Also, probably some New York political thinking there.
Dude. Yeah,
going to be an Italian.
Yeah, Cuomo.
Right. Yeah.
How do you get from Warren to Bill? It's all very shady. Like he's just trying to be Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's birth name was also not Clinton.
Right.
Is that true? What was his last name?
Blythe, I believe. Yeah, and his.
Anything that's severe that ends in like a consonant is like not. You want a nice vowel or like a Clinton,
Yeah.
something like a Blythe.
Right.
Too abrupt.
Yeah, well said.
Not really.
I know what you mean, though.
Not to compare these people to Hitler, but I believe Hitler also did this, where he took a different name and he said, if my name was my original name, I wouldn't have been able to conquer Europe. So
this is why you have guests, because let me compare them to Hitler. No, I'm willing to go out on that.
He in 2001 changes his name, runs for city council. He's representing South Brooklyn, Park Slope, Windsor Terrace, Carroll Gardens. Reelected 2003, 2005, and then he runs for public advocate in 2009. Is actually endorsed by Mario Cuomo, and has supported Andrew Cuomo's first gubernatorial campaign in 2002, which doesn't go so well. But they are like allies for a little bit, and then becomes public advocate. Starts the worst landlords list. Apparently, that was not a thing before Bill de Blasio.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a theme of this podcast. I think his legacy is going to be complicated, but there's going to be a lot of things that people look back on and be like, that was good. You know
yes,
what I mean?
yes.
I think there
absolutely.
will be.
Yeah.
He froze my rent 3 times. So yeah.
Right, which we just kind of forgotten about. Like that is seen as an extreme policy for Zohran to do, unilaterally freeze the rent. How could you do such a thing? Well, I didn't even know this happened. De Blasio did it 2 or 3 times when he was mayor. You can just do that. It's part of New York City law.
Yeah, he didn't sell it, though. See, like, Zohran's letting us know that you can do it. He's like, I'll do the good policy, but I'm not going to let you know it can be done, so you won't think of it to vote for it in the election.
Joe Biden coded, once again, trying, like, not selling policy that you're running. Anyway.
Right. Well, yeah, and he runs for mayor in 2013. I remember this primary a little bit because at first it looked like the front runner was Christine Quinn, who was a lesbian, and I mentioned that because I wonder if Bill de Blasio could have converted her if they had under a different circumstance.
Wasn't there a similar thing with Quinn where it was like anybody but Quinn? That's going on with Cuomo currently.
I think so. Yeah, I don't think she was as bad, but she definitely had made some enemies and was more center right Democrat.
I do think I voted for her.
Oh, really?
I know I never voted for de Blasio.
Comes out.
Yeah, and I watched the debates, and I kind of liked her. I didn't like her then. She criticized Cynthia Nixon as an unqualified lesbian.
Right.
Tell Cuomo later.
That's a big theme of this episode thus far is lesbianism.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting.
Bill de Blasio may be one of the most lesbian-coded presidential candidates.
Yeah, very much so.
To not be a lesbian himself. I wonder if a lesbian has run for president. I'm sure someone has.
No, we're going to have to dig deep. Yeah.
When's the Hillary episode coming out?
But she flames out pretty quickly. And then the front runner for a little bit is Anthony Weiner, who this is after the first texting scandal has broken.
I watched that.
The doc.
Yeah, and he was riding high,
yeah.
And then the second scandal
right,
broke, right?
Right. 2011, he has to resign from Congress because it comes out that he's sexting with social media admirers, and then by 2013, he's gone to rehab. And I remember reading something at the time that said, like, they talked to experts on like sex addiction and this kind of compulsive behavior, and they said in the time, like, he may have left the rehabilitation too early or something, because they said like it's just very unusual that somebody would recover that quickly, and it seems like he just he's a very compulsive person, so he launched this campaign, and I actually kind of wanted him to win for a bit there, because he was in Congress. He was an early champion of Medicare for all, which at the time he would call single payer, which thankfully they did away with that term of art. But he was talking about doing that for New York City, having like a single payer healthcare system in New York City. I don't know if that would be possible, but at least cool that he's getting that on the table. And then, it comes out that he never really stopped sexting people, and it's just this strange addiction, and is humiliating Huma Abedin throughout that movie. It just, you feel so bad for her.
Yeah, she's just like sitting there, and she's like, I can't wait to go work for Hillary Clinton campaign. Which is like it's like, oh, there's another bigger humiliation waiting you at the end of this rainbow.
And she stayed with him, I think, because of Hillary, who stayed with Bill Clinton and was like, you gotta stand by your man in America. And then eventually, it's reported anyway that Hillary's like kick him to the curb.
Right. That's crazy that some like politics is that all encompassing.
Yeah.
That it's not only like your public life, but it's your private life as well. They're like, all right, now divorce your husband. Right. And it's like, okay, will do.
Definitely, yeah.
They're the original reality stars.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and he ends up possibly costing Hillary the election because his computer gets discovered, and then they're like, maybe there's more Clinton emails right before the election, and Comey writes that letter.
Right.
Wow.
But in 2013, Weiner was a front runner for a little bit, and we forget there had not been a Democrat elected mayor of New York since Dinkins in '89. It was Giuliani and then Bloomberg, and Bloomberg had 3 terms. So it's taken for granted this is a Democratic city, but we hadn't had a mayor who was a Democrat in a really long time. And he was, ended up being so unpopular that it was just a foregone conclusion that who was going to get the nomination was going to become mayor, even though that had not been the case in a long time. But de Blasio ends up taking the left lane. I remember saying at the time I wasn't eligible to vote because I had like a moving situation, and it was just like a few months or a couple weeks short of when I would have needed to register. But I would have voted for John Liu, who actually just endorsed Zohran and was the New York City comptroller, very progressive, and was against stop and frisk. And this is an important forgotten piece of that 2013 primary. De Blasio, when he becomes a front runner, he runs that ad with his son Dante, and the afro and him getting harassed by police and the talks he has to have with him about that, and says he's against stop and frisk. Earlier on in the race, John Liu was the only candidate actually promising to end stop and frisk. The reason de Blasio changed is because there was a court ruling that said this is unconstitutional. You can't keep doing this. But up until that ruling, de Blasio was like, yeah, we gotta allow it, you know.
That's very Lyndon B. Johnson coded. Like, just whatever is, like, happening, like, okay, now.
Right.
Go. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And he came in at the right time, had those red signs, and was talking about A Tale of Two Cities. He's really a very minor part of the Wiener documentary. There's like a shot of de Blasio at this parade early on.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, Anthony Weiner has all this attention, and the press is talking to him, and de Blasio is just kind of marching with like 2 supporters and a sign, and it's like pathetic. And then he's just was there at the right time at the very end.
He absorbed all of like Wiener's disappointed fan base, essentially.
Yeah, definitely.
Except for Anders Lee, who's stuck with John Liu.
Yes. Till I die.
There's a Liu head over here. Cindy Lou Who.
It is funny that the other candidates were like, "Oh, it's unconstitutional. We still got to pat down black men to see if they have guns,
right,
drugs, or whatever."
Yeah. No, there is like I don't know, some sort of fascist element in New York City politicians going on, especially as it relates to the outer boroughs, let's say.
Right.
You know?
Definitely, and that's So
that's what sunk Bloomberg's candidacy is. Remember that audio recording of him being like, all the crime is in the black neighborhoods. You know? Like, and they were like, you can't be president.
Right. Oh man, can't wait we're gonna do that one soon.
Oh yeah. Nice tease.
Yeah.
But de Blasio overwhelmingly elected in 2013. His opponent is Joe Lhota, who had worked for Giuliani and had to keep saying, I'm not Giuliani, but stop disparaging Rudy Giuliani. So he wins overwhelmingly, and then he's sworn in by Bill Clinton, actually. And
pre Little St. James.
Before that was public anyway.
Right. Yeah.
But he develops a reputation early on as being late. He's notoriously tardy. He begins his press conferences late. He naps in the city hall office. That's reported. He says that's a New York Post smear, but there have been other outlets that have said he's been napping in his office. And
I'm pro nap. Yeah, get a little rest. It's okay.
Yes, nothing wrong with napping. I'm not good at it. I have sleep issues, but if you can do it, by all means. Only problem is he would keep his staffers waiting while he took a nap. And then he would miss memorials, or just not very time conscious, kind of head in the clouds guy because he's so tall.
Oh yeah,
he's up there.
A giraffe.
What was the St. James thing with Bill Clinton?
Oh, Epstein.
Little St. James.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to be tongue in cheek with that. You know.
So I'm not as Epstein knowledgeable as you guys.
Not yet. I mean, more will be coming out in the next couple weeks.
It'll be retweeted.
Yeah, right.
At least half the presidents are sex criminals, realistically. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
I feel
I'd
like
say all of no. Well, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
In my lifetime, Obama, I'm thinking isn't. The rest of them, I'm very unsure about.
Yes.
At best.
Yeah.
I think I'm dead to right sure of Clinton and Trump. Those would be the two that are for sure sex criminals.
Yes.
And Biden. I would throw Biden in there too.
Yeah, a little hair smell.
Yeah, and the Tara Reid.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I don't think de Blasio has any of those skeletons in his closet. I don't know if he's
too busy napping.
Right, napping. I don't think he would be competent enough to pull off any kind of.
You can't commit sexual impropriety if you're asleep. You know?
Right. But his crowning achievement, he actually gets done early on. And this is something I really didn't appreciate until recently because I don't have kids. They're not really part of my life very much anymore. So this is something I remember when it happened, but I kind of figured, oh, that's just like a fake thing. Like he didn't really do this. And the thing was universal pre-K.
I know, isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
he did that,
right?
Paid family sick leave too. Which
Yes,
is like
right.
Sorry to jump the gun.
No, that's okay. Yeah, that it is still around and is something that Ross Barkan argues, like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, this is something you won't be able to take away. Politicians in the future, maybe they can talk about adjusting it, expanding it, maybe reforming it here and there, but you're not going to be able to take this away from the people of New York City. Which it has made a big difference. I mean, I remember at the time I was like, oh, well, this just like, changed the definition of a daycare or something. But no, it did actually require a lot of state funding. And it's wound up getting 3,000 new classrooms created in school buildings. And
I do have some questioning how well funded it is. I've heard scuttlebutt that, you can kind of screw with the funding and then there's not as many spots and people end up going to private schools.
Yes,
right?
it's
voucher systems and stuff.
Yeah, there is. I don't know if we do those, but there's definitely the devil's in the details with the execution a little bit. But again, I'm not a parent either, but I've talked to parents and preschool people a little bit.
Right. Well, the way he wanted to do it was by raising taxes. And Cuomo, this is kind of the beginning of their beef, is that you have a mayor of New York City who's elected as a progressive. Cuomo's used to dealing with Bloomberg, and so all of a sudden you have this upstart guy who used to work for him, and he wants to raise taxes on his donors, and he says, I don't think so, but de Blasio really fights for it very early, and he's very aggressive about pursuing pre-K, which you need the state for. And this is something that's getting, hurled at Zohran. All these proposals, they require state intervention from Albany. And
everything that he's suggesting would be like pretty commonplace during de Blasio's reign. You know what I mean?
A lot of it,
not everything, but like...
Right.
The freezing the rent, you don't need the state for, which is good to have that be your signature issue.
Yeah.
But paying for I guess paying for the free buses or whatever might be more difficult.
Right.
Right. Or community-owned grocery stores.
Yeah, true. But if you galvanize people and you put pressure on them and you have this demand that's very popular, then the legislature will be more likely to work with you. And this was at a time when the Republicans controlled the state Senate, and they did get it done. Cuomo relented and ended up kind of like just moving some stuff in the budget around and gave money for it. I don't think he ended up raising that much in taxes. But he never forgave de Blasio for this, and in exchange, he kind of cut a deal where he was like, okay, fine, you get universal pre-K, but now I'm going to make it so your city's Department of Education is going to have to give free space to charter schools. So you're going to have to house charter schools in public schools, and if there's not room for them, then you're going to have to take money from the New York City education budget and pay rent for them in some other building that you're not even a part of.
We're going to make this guy the mayor?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's letting the wolf in the hen house.
Yeah, dude. He even has a face like a wolf, man. It's so...
He does. Okay, yeah, he looks like he's a predator.
Yeah.
And their feud goes on and on. Some of it's pretty funny. Frustrating, but there was a snowstorm in New York, and Cuomo gave de Blasio 15 minutes notice before shutting down the subway. And there
wasn't a lot of actual snow. I remember this happening, I think. I think I was trying to do stand-up comedy shows or whatever, and they're like, the subways are closed, everything's canceled. And then it didn't snow that much.
Right. It was purely just to mess with Big Bird.
Yeah. Oscar the Grouch versus Big Bird.
Right. And they went back and forth on Uber. Cuomo was singing the praises of Uber. De Blasio was trying to place some regulations on them. And then behind the scenes, Cuomo stops that from happening. There's a big to-do about a deer that's running around in Harlem. And there's... de Blasio says, well, we have to euthanize this deer that's running around New York City. It's not safe for a deer. Unfortunately, we're going to have to put it down. And Cuomo is like, no, you don't have the authority to do that. I control the deer in New York. And so he stops him from euthanizing a deer. the topless
Let me
ban.
get into the deal. Yeah, so Cuomo was like, because he used to be married to a Kennedy, he was like to his ex-wife, call your brother-in-law, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and come hunt this deer, and that's how we're going to solve it. And you put him in the trunk of your car.
Yeah, that might have been an okay solution.
Dude, congestion pricing is dead if Cuomo gets elected, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's like he's for private enterprise, so like, yeah.
Which is because he's basically responsible for it. And de Blasio was against it. That was one weird issue where they kind of flip-flopped, and de Blasio was like to the right of Cuomo.
Maybe I'm wrong then. Yeah.
Well, but by now Cuomo is like, if it's unpopular with the donors, then he'll do
He'll do whatever they want.
Yeah. But there's it is law for women to be topless in New York City, as in they are allowed to do it, not that they,
Not required,
they have to do it.
Yeah. You hear that?
Yeah. I know you would like that, Christine Quinn. No, but Cuomo is incensed at this and wants to change the law, and de Blasio is like, well, we'll look at it, and Cuomo's like, no, we must intervene now to stop the women from going topless.
Anything where the women get a choice, he's not too excited.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Yeah. But on police who support Cuomo broadly, this is also another one-sided feud where the Cuomo de Blasio feud was reported as like de Blasio, arrogant guy, stubborn guy. But in this case, he kind of was a doormat for Cuomo. He would complain about him, but he didn't really challenge him in a politically meaningful way. And the same is true of the NYPD. He gets elected by making this one of his core issues, the end of stop and frisk, when it's really, again, just like complying with what the court has ruled. But he doesn't really do too much. He comes in office 2014. That I believe in the fall is the murder of Eric Garner, and so there's mass protest. The NYPD is just like, well, the mayor's on the side of the protesters, and then a cop ends up getting killed. This was in my neighborhood at the time, the Myrtle Willoughby G-stop. I remember walking home, and the block leading up to my street was just totally blocked off. I couldn't get there. And then I find out that this incident has happened, and the cops basically blame de Blasio. They're like, this is your rhetoric, your anti-police rhetoric. And this is, mind you, long before defund the police. People were saying Black Lives Matter back then, but it was not, it was not as radical of a set of events. It was
before ACAB. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This one really changed me. Like, I was like, this stuff's happening in other places, but it wouldn't happen in New York, even though stuff had happened in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, damn, even the New York police are just doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
And Garner even happened near where I used to live. So it was like, this was my precinct.
And this is something that I worry about if Zohran gets elected and we talked about this actually in the car when we were driving back from that show with DSA. But like, if Zohran gets elected, will the cops like serve him? Will they like be down? Because they are like almost a parallel government in a certain way.
Yeah, that is the main thing I'm nervous about. I mean, there's going to be a lot of obstinates if Zohran becomes mayor, which is not a sure thing, but he in theory has authority over them. I think the lesson from de Blasio, though, might be that you have to like show them who's boss, which he didn't really do. Dinkins tried to do it in the late 80s, early 90s, and they straight up like almost had a coup. They like tried to storm City Hall, a bunch of off-duty cops. So they could do something like that again, but I don't know. I don't know how he's going to deal with that.
Right, yeah.
De Blasio's first mistake is he immediately hires a Giuliani guy, Bill Bratton, to be the commissioner. You got to hire a commissioner who's a little bit with the program.
Right. Yeah, find a woke police chief out there or something.
I'm sure it's not easy. But
San Francisco had a hippie cop head in the 70s, so it has been done. It's been a while. Not a lot of people.
That is an odd personality that leads you into the police, but is also like, I've read Audre Lorde.
Right.
Like, that doesn't usually happen.
Right. But he's, as you said, he goes straight to the compromise, hires Bill Bratton, and then the rest of his police commissioners are all conservative Irish guys. It goes from Bratton to James O'Neill, and then Dermot Shea, who's in kind of the same type of pure person as Bratton. He's, really whining about bail reform. And is very defensive about the assaults that happened in 2020. But he's just kind of like, all right, I gave you a mick, hands off. What else? What more could you want? And they're still like incensed about it. They turn their backs to him, I believe, at that funeral after the Garner killing.
It is crazy with Bratton because between when he worked for Giuliani and when he worked for de Blasio, he would go around as a consultant and like preach the gospel of stop and frisk.
Right.
So you hired stop and frisk evangelist. A lot de Blasio kind of reminds me of Cory Booker in this way, where he seems really progressive, he speaks progressive, but then he immediately hires a Giuliani's guy to run the cops.
Yeah, and he does not fire Daniel Pantaleo, who's the guy who killed Garner. There's a couple things around the edges that he changes. He gets body cameras, which is a whole other subject as to how much that really does. And then de-escalation training, which I don't know what that actually entailed, but it's a thing.
Pointing the gun at someone and being like, calm down.
Right. Yeah.
It's a thing where someone makes good money teaching that.
Yes.
And they probably avoid accountability if it's effective or not.
Consulting class expands.
Yeah, good point. I remember I will say, when de Blasio became mayor, the incident happened under Bloomberg, but by the time I ended up settling, it was de Blasio was mayor. I got beat up by a cop in 2013. And my lawyer at the time was saying, like, oh, we have this super liberal mayor now. And he was like almost like complaining about it. This is my lawyer. It was like, we have this super liberal mayor who's just giving settlements out willy-nilly. That was according to him. I don't know how actually widespread that was, but there is a possibility that the settlements at least increased under de Blasio. But
clearly the cops were out of control. They're beating up skinny Irish-looking guys. Like that, you could have been their son. Yeah, they were real violent.
I was the grandson of one of them. But then he dogs his kid in 2020 during the protests. They post this picture of his child, who I believe is non-binary now. So it's like, what did he actually do to take you on? I don't know. By bringing up the fact that his son has been discriminated against and harassed, that is like a threat to you. But as far as Zohran, there's a possibility his Department of Public Safety will hopefully kind of solve some of these, because he's saying to the cops, you're being asked to do all this stuff. Wouldn't it be nice if you don't have to handle mental health crises and all these other things that we should have other types of professionals dealing with? Maybe some of them will,
but that would require. So there is 45,000 people that work for the police department. 35,000 of them are police officers. So I would like to see that reduced. You know what I mean? That seems like too many. It would be in the top 100 in terms of like militaries on Earth. You know what I mean? Like it ranks among like national military.
Right.
But I think when they hear that rhetoric, I think they hear like, oh, you're gonna fire some of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna like reduce our benefits, or you know what I mean? And it becomes it's like a smaller version of the Blob in DC,
right?
Like the Defense Department. It's just this like unaccountable parallel government that runs in New York.
Yeah.
So I don't see how they're gonna. It seems like they want Cuomo.
I think you probably need leftist J6, to be honest.
Yeah.
We'll see if that actually happens.
I guess the hope with Zohran is that he's a DSA guy. He's got an organization.
Yeah.
De Blasio speaks progressive, but he's a Clinton guy, and that's not organizing anything.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. But he does do some other progressive things. He divests from fossil fuels and gets Scott Stringer to do that as the comptroller. And he has a press conference with Naomi Klein, where he announces he's going to sue fossil fuel companies. It's kind of this very typical de Blasio thing with this bold symbology. The case ends up getting dismissed, so it doesn't really go anywhere. But at least, the city's funds are divested. And homelessness didn't really... He didn't do too much on that. Housing in general, he had a very ambitious plan to construct 50,000 new homes and preserve more units. But this was unevenly distributed. It benefited upper middle class New York, like people like him, basically. Got a little more breathing room, but for poor people in New York City, things just continued to get worse and worse. On
homelessness, yes. He goes on the Daily Show in 2014, and it kind of summarizes his whole perspective. Talks about homelessness. He's like, well, I started sending mental health workers to talk to the homeless, build a relationship. But then he also says, well, Bill Bratton told me that some of these young people on the street who are homeless, they're just panhandling because that's the job they've chosen to do.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, he's just taking talking
that's
points.
Reaganite rhetoric.
Right. Just straight up, accepting the talking points from your police commissioner. But and he has taken money from real estate, and that was in 2013. He was in the background. He was getting money from developers. There's another thing I'm worried about with Zohran is the nonprofit industrial complex. Which is going to be opposed to him on certain things. I've kind of figured de Blasio was like part of that world. He didn't even give nonprofits too much of the pie. Like it was really straight up. Mostly to for-profit developers, and
Cuomo is really tied with this company called Vornado, which makes making all the skyscrapers near Madison Square Garden and doing all those renovations. So that's his all-around Midtown. That's the money that's coming towards him. So he does not give one. It's going to be luxurious skyscrapers under Cuomo,
We need buildings that are taller than Bill de Blasio. We're going to show him he cannot be the tallest entity in New York City. But and a big problem in New York is the AMI, area median income, is pegged not to the city itself, but to like the surrounding region. So it gets skewed upwards and distorts what's actually quote unquote affordable.
New York's a city where you're like, I don't make enough to live in the affordable housing.
Right.
Yeah. Crazy.
Because it's
like 130,000 or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Barkin points out that there are affordable units designated that way officially, but you're not living in them unless you're making high 5-figure or a 6-figure salary. On Israel, this is a sign, I think, of perhaps things changing. I don't know if somebody could get away with coding themselves as progressive or leftist as de Blasio did and be this bad on Palestine. When he took office, it was in 2014. There's Operation Protective Edge in Gaza, and de Blasio, I think not long after that, he gives a speech in front of AIPAC and says that he considers defending Israel part of his job description, and that he'll always be open to AIPAC when you need me to stand by you or at Washington or anywhere else. I will answer the call. I'll answer it happily because that's my job.
It's so feudal. It's like the New York City mayor gets elected, and then he has to go to Israel for his first ever trip to pay tribute to his feudal lord. And they act like, well, it's because Jewish New Yorkers care about anti-Semitism, but it's really just big money support for Israel.
Right. Yeah.
Well, there seems to be this at least initial pushback. I know that with the mayoral debate, they were like, all right, Zohran, when are you going to go to Israel? And he's like, well, I would just probably be here and supporting New York City, which is the city I ran. Like, so I think, and this might be the rhetorical strategy moving forward when someone asks you about Israel, asks you about your allegiance, just act confused. You know what I mean? Be like, what do you mean? You know what I mean?
Why are you singling out Israel?
Right. It's like, well, I wasn't elected to represent Israel. I was right. And I mean, I'm sure there is a subset of the population here that are going to take that as like wildly anti-Semitic or something. But I think ultimately, just this kind of like reproach of like, oh, why are you even asking me about that?
Right.
Is an effective strategy.
I think
Because that's what Zohran did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then he said it's like Israel's a right to exist, but with equal rights for everybody, including the Palestinians. And it's like, you don't have a right to treat people unequally.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have a right to be an apartheid state. I think he's kind of helped get rid of that question because he's shown how stupid it is.
Right, and it's putting the media on the defensive, hopefully.
It's like, why are you asking me that?
Right. Yeah. What does it mean to be a Jewish state? Further in the story, he's elected again in 2017. Overwhelmingly, doesn't get much of a challenge. And Barkin says he kind of, in a way, there's a mistake, is that he really puts everything into the universal pre-K and then doesn't really do much else for the rest of his time as mayor.
And that was like in his first 2 years, right?
Yeah. And he kind of expends all his political capital on that and isn't, really part of a movement to try and achieve more things. And he's alienates a lot of people on the left. He's kind of makes a lot of different enemies on all parts of the political spectrum. There's an article from Danny Catch in Jacobin who met with de Blasio when he was mayor as a parent and part of an organization of parents who wanted to know, they wanted their co-parent, the other parents at their schools to know that they can opt out of some of this standardized testing, that their kids don't have to take these tests. And de Blasio was just like, well, you don't get what I have to do as someone who's governing. I'm actually governing. You're in a different, on a different plane. You don't get it, man.
They don't even get us, man.
Yeah.
That's...
And it's, example.
He came off as so defensive. Did you guys ever listen to Brian Lair?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He would go on there I guess they do this with all the mayors, but he would go on there every Friday or something like that. And he just became besieged in the last and it's weird because it seems like this happens to every mayor, but towards the last 3 years of your mayoralship, especially if you've been a 2-term mayor, your entire job is just defending the status quo or what you've set forth, you know? So you get 1 year to 16 months of actual governance, and the rest of it is just playing defense.
Right.
And I mean, you could extrapolate that to the presidency too, but it's crazy.
Yeah. And he really didn't do himself favors by alienating the activist communities who he in theory would like need to rely on for political help. But
I have a theory, but I think Bill de Blasio is a guy who likes progressive stuff, but Warren William Jr., his birth name, that is a conservative guy who does not want to get in the mud with the activists.
Right, and that's how it goes down.
And the Catch article, the title is "Why Bill de Blasio is Such a Schmuck," which is like Yiddish for penis, means you're like kind of a jerk or whatever. A putz or a dick.
But despite having like few accomplishments and being overwhelmingly unpopular, he does run for president in 2019. And this is also after Amazon, which he is thinking of building a facility in New York City, and there's kind of this like sweepstakes of which city will get it that looks like they're going to go with New York, and then people organized against it. And again, the activists of New York City are opposed to it, and de Blasio's kind of like, well, it's Amazon. It'll be, maybe it'll be good. And I think there's some weird quote where he's like, trying to invoke Karl Marx by saying that people, there's having a job can also be like a fulfilling thing. He says there's a whole left position that says you need development to help people achieve their potential, a tradition that stretches back to the time of Karl Marx. So he's like invoking Marx to defend Amazon. And then the deal doesn't go through, and he tries to take credit for sinking it and say like, well, Amazon, the people of New York, we showed them that they just can't, boss us around, when he was like making these weird arguments in support of it.
A little more on Amazon. I think he also said he didn't think they'd back off that quickly. Like there's a little bit of pushback and they just completely back off. The Amazon thing was, I remember I was working on trading floors then on CNBC, the whole sweepstakes, and they're going to pick one place for HQ2, so many jobs. And what Amazon does is they say we're going to have two HQ2s, one in New York and one in DC. So they're splitting the benefit, and it's really less fair. And then the deal that ended up getting made in New York, they're going to be paying Amazon $48,000 in public money for each job. So they're basically paying the people's salaries.
Right. Yeah. And Andrew Cuomo is backing it full hilt. He's saying, I'll change my name to Amazon Cuomo if I can get this deal. But yeah, not a lot of thought about what this is actually, how this is actually going to help, because there are a lot of other ways to, if you want to boost economic prosperity.
You become tethered to how the company does too, and you become completely subservient. You see this with like Republicans that are now in these districts with electric vehicles. You know, in the latest bill, the EV mandate is going away, and so these Republicans are like bending over backwards to be like, actually, we do like electric. I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
So like whatever Jeff Bezos, you essentially become a slave to him. So
De Blasio strikes me as a rich kid who's read a lot of books.
Yeah.
Like he's never actually been left, but he really likes reading, he likes cosplaying as it.
Right, and he brings these things up. There's
he'd be great as a New York comedian.
Oh, absolutely. And tall,
that could happen.
Right.
You could get into that. But yeah, like you said, he has these weird moments where he'll quote Marx in 2020 on Brian Lehrer. He's asked about his economic plans with pandemic recovery, and he says the focus has not been on the business community and the elite, and quotes Marx in saying the state is the executive committee of the bourgeoisie, and that he's trying to do things a different way, which is pretty dubious. And yeah, then
this is after he's courted Amazon. Yeah,
right.
He's like, I'm on the. Yeah, that's you, dog.
And he gets in trouble in 2019 in Miami for quoting Che, which made some of the more conservative Latino people in Miami really mad.
Miami is filled with the sons and daughters of the capitalist class that fled.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, very tone deaf.
Cuba.
Yeah. He has like a lack of self-awareness.
Can we talk about the Tale of Two Cities thing?
Yeah.
So that was his pitch. It's that there's one part of the city that's rich and one part that's poor. And I happen to have been reading Tale of Two Cities as we were getting ready for this podcast, just coincidentally. But I think it's really not even about the book. He's just stealing John Edwards' Two Americas.
Yeah. And as we said in the Edwards episode, there's a lot of similarities between de Blasio and Edwards, I would say. Edwards is a lot smoother, for sure. But politically, they represent kind of a similar vibe.
And they're both in political oblivion now. There's nothing left of them.
Yeah. But leading up to 2020, when he runs, he is trying to, on the same note as this left-wing coding stuff, he's really trying to become an ally of Bernie Sanders. I remember when this happened, he was hanging out at the Bernie Sanders lake house on a summer vacation. His family came and stayed with the Sanderses, and it was like, what's going on here? Is Bernie like, why is he
VP run or something?
Yeah, is that what it is? And then you find out later in the book by Ari Robin Haft, who was an aide to Bernie, that Bill de Blasio essentially bugged Bernie Sanders like a bunch of times about coming to stay at their lake house, and then finally Bernie was like, all right, fine, you can come. And they get this photo taken of them on the beach. And
there's laundry all over the couch or whatever. Yeah, like it's not, Bernie didn't even clean up.
Right. But that kind of, is a quintessential de Blasio story where he's like really trying to get this optics that he's.
That's Lyndon B. Johnson too.
Right.
Like just like wearing someone out and like let me be. Yeah, he wanted the Bernie stink on him.
Yes.
He wanted the requisite like clout that came with being a Bernie Sandersite, but
right. And he could have gotten it if he had supported Bernie. If he had just said from the very beginning, I'm mayor of New York City, I support Bernie Sanders,
Didn't he eventually come around to
He
him?
did eventually, but he decides to run against him. He becomes the 23rd Democrat to enter that primary, and he is not very popular in New York at the time, and his decides to launch with a pretty gross looking logo. It's just like a Seahawks.
That's it.
Sort of blue and green.
It's
That's
so
some
Seahawks.
MS Paint, circa 1998.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the placeholder that someone made. To until they made the real logo.
It's bad because his logo in 2013, I got to give him credit, is great. It's just like red de Blasio, kind of invokes, red, like a little, maybe a
Trump
little bit
stole the
socialist.
red.
Yeah. But he should have gone with that. He should have kept his 2013 logo.
In general, his name is annoying. In this logo, you can see like it's DE lowercase space Blasio, and that's very annoying to spell. He's annoying to search for. The lack of capital letters at the beginning of your last name. There's a lot of issues with that name.
Also, the way that 2020 just bleeds into the letters above it is not good.
Right. Yeah, there's a really hard border between the blue and the green, and it looks weird.
That would get like a D in your like intro to graphic design class.
Yeah, especially there's a space at the top of the logo that they don't use. They sandwich 2020 and de Blasio together.
He was supposed to have a slogan. I just remember being as a New Yorker, and I was like mad about the subways or whatever. I was like, "Fuck you, de Blasio. Why are you running for president?"
Right.
And that was kind of typical.
And I remember it being reported at the time is that like everybody around him was like, "Why are you doing this? This is not a good idea. Please don't." And he says, "Nope, I'm going to." Is again can be very stubborn and unself-aware, but I think it comes from his becoming mayor in 2013, where it was another very crowded primary, and the people who looked like they were the contenders at the beginning didn't end up sticking around. So he saw that happening again on the national level, but was very wrong. There's a video of New Yorkers being asked about his candidacy, and one woman says, "Hell no, he ain't running the city. What makes him think he can run the country?" People in New York were not happy. There was a blackout that summer of 2019, and I remember I was actually working at a restaurant in Park Slope where the de Blasios would frequent. It was more so before he became mayor that there were regulars, but I remember them coming in once while I was working there. And then that summer, there's a blackout. It makes life mayhem if you're a server at a restaurant where there's a blackout going on. And de Blasio's off in Iowa campaigning for president, and there's a freaking blackout in his own city. And his response, and this is such a perfect distillation of Bill de Blasio, his response is like, "Oh yeah, Con Ed, big problem with Con Ed. They screwed up. We really ought to think about municipalizing Con Ed, nationalizing Con Ed, taking it over as the government." And that is just like throwing out a proposal there that's a good proposal, but one he's never going to actually do.
No, and also he's coming to he was still the mayor, or he wasn't?
Yeah, he was still mayor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But he's term limited out in a year or two.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, that would be, oh my God. Can you imagine the colossal undertaking that would be? Like you would have to like start your mayoral candidacy with that proposal.
Would that would have to have been his universal pre-K.
Yeah.
Which is like a thing that absolutely should happen, but it's just such a like cheap thing to just like throw this bone to people like me when you're not actually going to do the bare minimum of like being in the city where the thing is happening and trying to manage it. Or like put actual, use whatever power you have to actually pressure Con Ed, which I doubt he did.
Yeah, this was really a vanity campaign.
Yeah.
And he reminds me most of this guy, Tom Steyer, who would run a bunch of ads. The need to impeach. Then he spends a bunch of money. He gets in a couple debates. Same man as de Blasio. And they're saying the same stuff as Bernie and maybe Warren. But it's like, well, why don't you just support those guys because they have a chance and they're the standard bearers? Why do you need to personally be on the stage?
And his answer is like, this classic thing of like, they don't know how to manage. They're legislatures. I'm an executive. I've gotten things done. Yada yada.
Bloomberg too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not in it at the same time either. There's 2 New York mayors who run in this race, and they run 6 months apart because that's how long the campaign is.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But he's running this progressive campaign ostensibly. He's talking about infrastructure. He proposes a robot tax for AI. But he's getting funded by the same people, and this makes me think maybe it was like a campaign for New York, because his Politico found there was $234,000 from 37 donors who had already maxed out, and they went above the federal mandated limit to give to PACs that helped de Blasio. And just weren't governed by the same FEC rules. And they paid for his travel to primary states. They paid for polling. And these 37 donors were from New York City real estate, finance, and legal circles. So he's getting funded by New York City, and maybe these people are thinking like, well, this is maybe somewhere down the line there will be some type of benefit we'll inner from de Blasio running, and remembering that we gave him this money, like he'll cut some deal with somebody, but that doesn't seem like that really happened. He was against Joe Biden, like a lot of people. He says Joe Biden said he told wealthy donors that nothing would fundamentally change. Kamala said she wasn't trying to restructure society. Well, I am.
Yeah, he sounded good in the debates when he wasn't being protested for that, not firing that cop who killed Eric Garner.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, when he was being protested for the things he actually did.
Right. Another, classic de Blasio moment. He's on the stage talking about how he wants to restructure society, and saying that we have to redistribute wealth. There's plenty of money in this country. It's just in the wrong hands. Rich has gotten richer. And then he starts getting protested by people from his city that he's governing at the time, because he still hasn't fired a cop who murdered somebody.
This is 5 years after the killing.
Yeah. NBC says he ate chocolate chip granola bars ahead of the debate, and maybe that was like his dinner, and that made him a little... He wanted to have that extra hungry edge or something.
Yeah, yeah, sweet tooth. I know Letterman would have candy bars before he went on air a lot. But the problem is you don't want to be a granola guy. Oh, this granola guy, all hippy dippy. He goes on Hannity too during this time, and Hannity's like the super left-leaning mayor of New York City, Comrade de Blasio, and they fight it out for like 40 minutes. He's the only candidate to go on Hannity.
Yeah.
If you go on Hannity, you're essentially signing up for a just yelling match for whatever the next amount of time is going to be.
Right. Conservative Irish guy. That's different life. Sean Hannity is governing New York and
totally. Oh my God. Yeah. I would say Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity. Either one of them could have taken it.
Yeah. But by September, he is polling at 0.
No one.
Yeah. Even in New York, he does not have 1% of the projected vote.
It's like Connor from Secession, like trying to hold on.
Right.
And the people in Iowa are like, this giant is going to kill us.
Yeah. It's the green giant from the corn cans.
He looks like the Jolly Green Giant. God, like his face. But he drops out September 20th, 2019. This would have been another great moment to redeem himself and say, I endorse Bernie Sanders. I'm part of the Sanders coalition. Maybe he gets invited to rallies, gets to speak, and kind of, charm the Bernie base a little bit. But he waits until February, when it's not entirely inconsequential, but the game is basically up. I think this is before Super Tuesday, but it's still...
I think that was early March, right?
Yeah, it's still like a little bit of time. This may have been when Bernie was surging, but still, like, you could have done it earlier on. Would have been smart to not run at all and just endorse Bernie, and then you have some kind of, if you want to be in the progressive world, then you have that sort of bona fide for when you're done with being mayor. Maybe you can run for something else at some point, but he's terrible political instincts. He lucked out one time, and is
he fell ass backwards into the mayorals.
he really did. He really did.
He tripped and fell and became New York City mayor.
Right, and then we'll talk probably on bonus at some point about his 2022 Congress campaign, which didn't go so well either. But last I heard of him, he dyed his hair. Which was like
which color?
Brown.
Okay,
Which
he's killing on Mariah.
Yeah, he's dating. He as of
interests, politics,
Italian sandwiches. But as of a few months ago, he was dating Nomiki Konst from the sort of the progressive media world. I don't know if they're still together, but the hair dye thing is another quintessential de Blasio-ism. Is like, we all saw you with the salt and pepper.
For years.
It looked fine.
I know, it looks age appropriate.
Right, yeah. We all know you're in your 60s or however old he is. Like, we don't
66. I looked it up. Yeah.
There you go. Like, it's totally fine to have a little gray in your hair. I'm 33. I have whitened my beard. It's
you
fine.
got to dye that, man. Come on.
Maybe I should take a page out of his book because he just
dye it brown, dude. That was really
like that. It's opposites with Creed.
I order some of his hair and like get it put on my face. But just straight shock brown, and it's just like jarring. Everybody sees that you dyed your hair. What are you trying to prove?
The shoe polish aesthetic. You know, like very strange.
Yeah, but. That's the Bill de Blasio. We like to end with a little counterfactual. If he became president, I don't know when that could have happened. I guess, the one time he ran, if things go differently, maybe Bernie has health issues and doesn't run. Warren decides not to run, so there's no real progressive. Maybe that's the ticket. And he, actually could have stood a chance because he would have been able to say to the donor class, don't worry about the stuff I'm saying. I'm not. Look at what I actually did as mayor. Come on.
Right. Yeah, I think the Amazon thing would have gone a long way with the donor class. It's like, hey, I actually wanted, a multinational corporation to run our government. But he also would probably get my vote, honestly. You know what I mean? If he ran against Trump, and it would have been a more enthusiastic one than it would have been for Kamala. I voted for Jill Stein. I don't know if that was the right move.
Oh, me too, yeah.
In 2020?
No,
in 2024.
Okay. I voted for Joe Biden in 2020.
Oh, we were both Biden-Stein voters.
Yeah.
De Blasio would have been a much better president than Biden, able to think.
The infrastructure bill would have passed no matter who was president. It was bipartisan,
Yeah.
The oligarchy wanted it.
Yeah, maybe he's a little more aggressive towards Joe Manchin, but I think he would have had...
He'd follow Kyrsten Sinema into the bathroom and be like, open up.
But he would have had a lot of the same problems, I think, about his mayoralty, just alienating allies and just being not having very good political instincts.
So he would have been our tallest president. Okay, yeah. Abraham Lincoln 6'4". Bill de Blasio 6'5" and 7/8", which is pathetic to care about the eighth when you're already 6'5".
Why do you know that?
It was on the Wikipedia, but I assume it's on the Wikipedia because he cares a lot. No, I didn't personally measure him yet.
Eyeball him.
I have met Zohran Mandani and Mandani. I'm sorry, I don't want to say it like Cuomo. Zohran Mandani, and he's born in Uganda, so he can't run for president. But he is a little bit too short to be president. He's 5'9", and that would be an issue in the campaign.
Okay, I like that he's shorter than me. I'll say that much.
He's got my vote.
But that's Bill de Blasio. Also, stuff about the pandemic we didn't really get to, but we'll wrap that up at some point.
Oh yeah, sub to the Patreon. Yeah, we got a lot more to say.
But Davidson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, guys. Where can people find you and your stuff?
So it's just my name, Davidson Boswell on TikTok and Instagram, and then I have the Davidson Boswell Show on Patreon, Davidson Boswell on YouTube. And I have a Substack, Davidson Boswell. So pretty much just search my name and subscribe to all of that.
Also, just want to plug BillDeBlasio.com, which is his campaign site.
Yeah, he runs a travel agency now.
All right, it's Vanquished.